Marcus Thompson walked through the empty parking garage at 9:30 p.m., his leather briefcase swinging gently at his side. The 38-year-old CEO of Thompson Industries had just finished another long day at the office, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for tomorrow's board meeting. His company manufactured medical equipment, and the pressure to meet deadlines was constant. But Marcus thrived under pressure. It's what had built his multi-million-dollar business from nothing. The parking garage echoed with his footsteps as he approached his black BMW. Marcus thought about his 8-year-old daughter Emma, who would already be asleep by the time he got home. Since his wife Sarah died in a car accident 3 years ago, balancing work and single parenthood had become his greatest challenge. His mother helped with Emma after school, but Marcus always made sure to tuck her in when he got home, no matter how late. As he reached for his car keys, Marcus heard footsteps behind him. 3 men emerged from behind a concrete pillar, moving with purpose toward him. The leader was tall and muscular, wearing a black hoodie. The other 2 flanked him on either side, one short and stocky, the other thin with nervous energy. "Marcus Thompson?" the tall man called out. Marcus turned, immediately sensing danger. His hand instinctively moved toward his phone. "Who's asking?" The 3 men surrounded him in a triangle formation. The leader stepped closer, and Marcus could see anger burning in his eyes. "You don't remember me, do you? Jake Morrison. You fired me 6 months ago." Recognition hit Marcus like a cold wave. Jake had been a production supervisor who was caught stealing equipment and selling it online. The theft had cost the company thousands of dollars, and Marcus had personally handled his termination. Jake had made threats during the meeting, but security had escorted him out. "Jake, whatever this is about, we can talk," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm while his mind raced for options. The parking garage was nearly empty, and his car was still 20 feet away. "Talk?" Jake laughed bitterly. "You destroyed my life. My wife left me. I lost my house. My kids won't even look at me." His voice grew louder with each word. "All because you couldn't give a man a second chance." The stocky man spoke up. "He's right, boss. This rich guy thinks he's better than working people like us." Marcus recognized him as Tony Ruiz, another former employee who'd been let go for showing up drunk repeatedly. The thin man remained silent, but kept glancing around nervously. Marcus didn't recognize him, but he seemed younger than the others, maybe early 20s. "I understand you're angry," Marcus said, slowly backing toward his car. "But stealing from the company wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. I had to protect the jobs of 200 other employees." Jake's face twisted with rage. "Protect jobs? You just wanted to protect your profits." He nodded to his companions. "Show him what happens when rich guys mess with the wrong people." Tony stepped forward first, cracking his knuckles. He was built like a bull and had probably outweighed Marcus by 40 pounds. Marcus was in decent shape from morning runs and weekend basketball with Emma, but he'd never been in a real fight since high school. The thin man hesitated. "Maybe we should just scare him, Jake. I didn't sign up to really hurt anybody." "Shut up, Danny," Jake snapped. "He needs to learn a lesson he won't forget." Marcus realized talking wouldn't work. These men had planned this encounter, probably waiting for him for days. They knew his schedule, his parking spot, everything. His only chance was to get to his car or find a way to call for help. As Tony lunged forward, Marcus surprised himself by stepping aside smoothly. Years of playing basketball with his daughter had kept his reflexes sharp. Tony stumbled past him, off balance. "Get him!" Jake shouted. Danny reluctantly joined the attack while Jake circled around to cut off Marcus's escape route. Marcus found himself fighting for his life in the fluorescent-lit garage, the sound of scuffling feet echoing off concrete walls. Tony swung a heavy fist at Marcus's head. Without thinking, Marcus ducked under the punch and drove his elbow upward, into Tony's solar plexus. The stocky man gasped and staggered backward, clutching his chest. Danny came at him from the left, throwing wild punches. Marcus blocked one with his forearm and countered with a quick jab to Danny's nose. Blood spurted and the young man cried out in pain. Jake watched in amazement as his carefully planned revenge began falling apart. "What the hell?" He's just some office guy. Marcus felt something awakening inside him. Muscle memory, he thought, was long buried. His movements became more fluid, more precise. He wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was systematically dismantling his attackers. Tony recovered and charged again, this time trying to tackle Marcus to the ground. Marcus sidestepped and used Tony's momentum against him, grabbing his shirt and redirecting him face first into a concrete pillar. Tony collapsed unconscious. Danny wiped blood from his nose, looking terrified. "Jake, this isn't working. He knows how to fight." "Impossible," Jake muttered, but doubt crept into his voice. The man in front of him moved nothing like the soft businessman he'd expected. Marcus's stance was balanced, his hands positioned like someone with serious training. Jake pulled a knife from his pocket, a 4-inch blade that gleamed under the garage lights. Maybe this will even the odds. Marcus saw the weapon and felt his heart rate spike, but his body remained calm. The scared single father was still there, thinking about Emma waiting at home. But something else had taken control. Something he'd kept buried for 15 years. "You don't want to do this, Jake," Marcus said quietly. His voice carried a new authority that made both remaining attackers pause. "Like hell I don't," Jake replied, but he hesitated before advancing. The standoff stretched for long seconds. Marcus stood perfectly still, watching Jake's eyes and the positioning of the knife. Danny backed away, no longer wanting any part of the confrontation. In the distance, a car engine echoed through the garage as someone else drove up the ramp. Jake heard it too and knew their window was closing. He rushed forward with the knife, raised, determined to finish what he'd started. What happened next would shock everyone involved and reveal a secret from Marcus's past that even his closest friends didn't know. Jake Morrison came at Marcus with the knife, expecting to see fear in the CEO's eyes. Instead, Marcus moved with lightning speed that defied explanation. He stepped inside Jake's attack, trapped the knife arm with his left hand, and delivered a devastating palm strike to Jake's elbow with his right. The joint bent backward with a sickening crack. Jake screamed and dropped the knife, which clattered across the concrete floor. Before he could recover, Marcus swept his legs and drove him face down onto the ground. In seconds, Jake found himself pinned with his injured arm twisted behind his back. "Stay down," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. Danny stared in disbelief at the scene before him. His friend Tony was unconscious against the pillar. Jake was immobilized on the ground, and the businessman they'd planned to intimidate stood over them like he'd been born for combat. "How did you do that?" Danny stammered, blood still dripping from his broken nose. Marcus didn't answer. He was listening to approaching footsteps as the car owner walked toward them. An elderly security guard rounded the corner, making his nightly rounds. The guard stopped dead when he saw the scene. "What's going on here?" the guard demanded, reaching for his radio. "Call the police," Marcus said calmly, still maintaining control of Jake's arm. "These men attacked me." As they waited for the authorities, Marcus's mind raced back to a time he'd tried to forget. 15 years ago, before business school and corporate success, he'd been Sergeant Marcus Thompson of the 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 tours in Afghanistan, countless classified missions, hand-to-hand combat training that had been drilled into him until it became instinct. When he'd left the military, Marcus had deliberately buried that part of his life. He'd grown his hair out, traded camouflage for business suits, and never mentioned his service to anyone except Sarah. Even after she died, he'd kept those memories locked away, focusing entirely on being the father Emma needed. The police arrived, within minutes, followed by paramedics who checked on the unconscious Tony and treated Danny's broken nose. Jake sat in the back of a police cruiser, cradling his shattered elbow and glaring at Marcus through the window. Detective Ray Sullivan took Marcus's statement while crime scene photographers documented the scene. Sullivan was a veteran cop in his 50s who'd seen everything, but he kept looking at Marcus with curiosity. 3 men with weapons and you walked away without a scratch, Sullivan mused. That's pretty remarkable for a businessman. I got lucky, Marcus replied simply. Lucky, huh? Sullivan glanced at Tony, who was being loaded onto a stretcher with a concussion. That's some kind of luck. Military background? Marcus hesitated. Long time ago. Sullivan nodded knowingly. Thought so. The way you controlled the situation, the way you're handling the aftermath. Most civilians would be shaking right now. Marcus wasn't shaking, but he was worried about Emma. It was past midnight, and his mother would be wondering where he was. He'd never missed tucking Emma in without calling first. The detective finished taking his statement and handed him a business card. We'll need you to come in tomorrow to sign the formal complaint. These guys are looking at aggravated assault, attempted armed robbery, and a few other charges. As the police cars pulled away with the 3 attackers, Marcus finally allowed himself to feel the weight of what had happened. He sat in his BMW for several minutes, hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline wore off. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Emma's worried. Is everything okay? Marcus quickly typed back. Work ran late. Be home in 20 minutes. During the drive home, Marcus tried to process what had happened. For years, he'd convinced himself that his military training was behind him, that he'd successfully transformed into a different person. Tonight proved that some things never truly go away. He thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully in her bed, unaware that her father had just been in a life-or-death situation. She knew he'd been a soldier before. She was born, but she had no idea what that really meant. To her, Daddy was the man who made pancakes on Saturday mornings and helped with homework, not someone who could disable armed attackers in seconds. Marcus pulled into his driveway at 12:45 a.m. The house was dark except for the porch light his mother always left on. He sat in the car for a moment, looking at the home he'd built with Sarah, thinking about the life he'd created after leaving the Rangers. Inside, his mother Dorothy was waiting in the living room, reading a book. At 62, she was still sharp and observant. She took one look at her son and knew something had happened. You look like you've been through hell, she said quietly, not wanting to wake Emma. Marcus hung up his coat and loosened his tie. Long day. At the office. Dorothy studied his face in the lamplight. She'd raised 3 boys and buried her husband in Vietnam. She knew when her children were lying, even her successful CEO's son. Marcus Thompson, I changed your diapers and nursed you through chickenpox. Don't try to fool me. What really happened? Marcus sank into his favorite armchair and rubbed his face. The same hands that had immobilized Jake Morrison an hour ago now felt the weight of exhaustion. Some former employees tried to settle a score tonight, he admitted. It didn't go the way they planned. Dorothy set down her book. Are you hurt? No, Mom, I'm fine. And them? Marcus looked at his mother, remembering all the times she'd patched up his scraped knees and listened to his problems. They'll recover. Eventually. Dorothy nodded slowly. She'd suspected for years that her son's military service had been more serious than he let on. The nightmares in the first year after he came home, the way he checked locks twice before bed, how he always sat facing the door in restaurants. Your father would be proud, she said simply. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Dorothy went to her room. Marcus climbed the stairs quietly and pushed open Emma's door. His 8-year-old daughter was curled up with her favorite stuffed elephant, breathing peacefully. He kissed her forehead gently. I love you, sweetheart, he whispered. Emma stirred slightly. Daddy, you're home late. I know, baby. Go back to sleep. Did you have an adventure today? She mumbled, already drifting off again. Marcus smiled despite everything. Something like that. As he got ready for bed, Marcus caught sight of himself in the bathroom mirror. He looked the same as always. Business executive, single father, pillar of the community. But something fundamental had shifted tonight. A door he'd kept locked for 15 years had been forced open, and he wasn't sure he could close it again. The next morning arrived with Emma bouncing on Marcus's bed at 7 a.m., completely unaware that her father had been in a fight for his life 12 hours earlier. She chattered excitedly about a school project while Marcus made breakfast, his body moving through the familiar routine despite having gotten only 3 hours of sleep. Mrs. Peterson says we need to write about our heroes, Emma announced, spreading peanut butter on her toast. I'm writing about you, Daddy. Marcus paused while pouring orange juice. Why me, sweetheart? Because you take care of people. You give them jobs at your company and you take care of me even though Mommy can't help anymore. Emma's matter-of-fact way of discussing her mother's death always amazed Marcus. Children had a resilience adults often lacked. That's very sweet, Em. But there are lots of heroes in the world. I know, but you're mine, she said simply, then ran upstairs to brush her teeth. Dorothy appeared in the kitchen doorway, fully dressed, despite the early hour. You look terrible, she observed. Thanks, Mom. Your encouragement means the world to me. She poured herself coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The news is reporting an incident in your building's parking garage. 3 men arrested for assault. Funny coincidence. Marcus had forgotten about the media. In today's world, everything became news within hours. He grabbed his phone and found several missed calls from his assistant and the company's legal team. I need to handle some things at the office, he said. Marcus. Dorothy's voice was serious. Whatever happened last night, it's going to come out. This city isn't that big and people talk. You might want to get ahead of it. She was right. By the time Marcus dropped Emma at school and arrived at Thompson Industries, reporters were already gathered outside the building. His assistant Jessica met him at the elevator with a worried expression. Mr. Thompson, thank goodness you're okay. The phones haven't stopped ringing. Channel 7 wants an interview, the newspaper is asking for a statement, and someone from the Rangers Association called. The Rangers Association. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He'd avoided all contact with his former unit for years, declining reunion invitations and ignoring attempts to connect him with other veterans. In his office, Marcus closed the door and called his lawyer, David Chen. They'd been friends since business school, but David knew nothing about Marcus's military background. Thank God you're alive, David said when he answered. I saw the police report. 3 attackers with weapons? How did you get out of that? I got lucky. Lucky? Marcus, one guy has a broken elbow, another has a concussion, and the third one's nose is shattered. That doesn't sound like luck. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. What do I need to know legally? The district attorney loves cases like this. Clear-cut self-defense with multiple witnesses and security footage. But the media attention could be a problem. They're calling it a miraculous escape and speculating about how a business executive fought off 3 armed men. As if on cue, Jessica knocked and entered with a stack of newspaper clippings and printed internet articles. The headlines ranged from CEO survives brutal attack to business executive's mystery fighting skills save his life. One article had already dug into Marcus's background. The reporter had found his military discharge papers through public records, but the details of his service were mostly classified. The article speculated about special forces training without any concrete proof. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Proud of you, brother. Jim Rodriguez. Jim had been Marcus's squad leader in Afghanistan. They'd served together on missions Marcus still couldn't discuss, even 15 years later. Seeing his name brought back a flood of memories Marcus had worked hard to suppress. Another text arrived. Holy shit, is that really you in the news? Tony Vasquez. Then another. Always knew you were a badass. Call me. Mike Chen. His phone kept buzzing as word spread through informal military networks. Veterans he hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, excited to reconnect with someone who'd apparently made national news for his fighting skills. Jessica knocked again. Mr. Thompson? There's a man here who says he's from the Veterans Administration. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. Marcus sighed. The VA representative turned out to be Colonel Robert Hayes, retired, who now worked as a liaison between the military and civilian communities. Hayes was in his 60s, gray-haired and still carrying himself like the soldier he'd once been. Sergeant Thompson, Hayes said, offering a firm handshake. Or should I say Mr. Thompson now? Just Marcus is fine. Hayes sat down and studied, Marcus with intelligent eyes. I've been reading about last night, quite a story. 3 armed men and you walk away without a scratch. The media's having a field day trying to figure out how a CEO learned to fight like that. Is there something you need, Colonel? Actually, there might be something you need. The Rangers Association has been trying to reach you for years. Did you know you're eligible for several commendations that were approved after your discharge? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I'm not interested in ceremonies or recognition. I figured you'd say that. But here's the thing. Your story is inspiring people. We've had dozens of calls from veterans who saw the news and want to reconnect with their military communities. Some of them have been struggling with civilian life, and seeing one of their own succeed is giving them hope. Hayes pulled out a folder. I've got contact information for 15 guys from your old unit. They're spread across the country now, but they all want to talk to you. Some are doing great, others... He paused. Well, others could use a friend who understands what they've been through. Marcus looked at the folder but didn't take it. I left that life behind for a reason. Did you? Because from what I saw on the security footage, that life never really left you. There was security footage. Marcus hadn't considered that the parking garage would have cameras. You've seen the video? The police shared it with us when they realized you were former military. Impressive work, by the way. Your hand-to-hand instructor would be proud. Hayes leaned forward. Look, I'm not here to drag you back into anything you don't want. But you've got skills and experience that could help other veterans. There's a self-defense program we run for military families, teaching spouses and kids basic protection techniques. We could use someone with your background. I have a company to run and a daughter to raise. I understand. But think about it. You're already helping people through your business. This would just be another way to serve. After Hayes left, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring out the window at the city he'd called home for 8 years. He'd built a good life here, far removed from the violence and uncertainty of his military years. But last night had proven that the past was never as buried as he'd believed. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Thompson? Your mother is on line 1. She says it's urgent. Marcus picked up the phone. Mom, what's wrong? Emma's school called. Some reporters showed up asking questions about you. The principal had to call security to escort them off the property. Marcus felt anger surge through him. Going after him was one thing, but involving Emma was crossing a line he wouldn't tolerate. Is Emma okay? She's fine, but confused. She doesn't understand why strangers want to ask about her daddy. I think you need to come clean with her about what happened before she hears it from someone else. Marcus closed his eyes. He'd hoped to keep Emma out of this, but Dorothy was right. In the age of social media and 24-hour news cycles, secrets didn't stay secret for long. The phone buzzed with another text, this one from Emma's teacher. Several parents asking questions about the news reports. Emma seems unaware, but other children might say something. Thought you should know. Marcus looked at Colonel Hayes's folder, still sitting on his desk. Inside were the names and contact information of men who'd shared the worst and best moments of his life. Men who understood things about him that no civilian ever could. For the first time in 15 years, Marcus Thompson began to wonder if it was time to stop running from who he used to be. That evening, Marcus picked up Emma from school personally instead of letting his mother handle it. He noticed the curious stares from other parents and teachers, all of whom had obviously seen the news coverage. Emma skipped to the car happily, unaware of the attention they were receiving. Daddy, Mrs. Peterson said some newspaper people came to school today. Were they here about you? Marcus helped her buckle her seatbelt, buying himself time to think of an answer. Yes, sweetheart. Something happened at my work last night, and people are interested in the story. What kind of something? He drove in silence for a few blocks, trying to figure out how to explain attempted murder to an 8-year-old. Some men who used to work at my company were angry with me. They tried to hurt me, but I stopped them. Emma frowned. Like bullies at school? Something like that, but grown-up bullies who are much more dangerous. How did you stop them? Did you tell a teacher? Marcus almost smiled at her innocent comparison. No, Em. I had to protect myself. It turns out Daddy knows how to do that. Better than most people. Because you were a soldier? This surprised him. Emma knew he'd been in the army before she was born, but they'd never discussed what that actually meant. Sarah had always changed the subject when Emma asked about Daddy's soldier days. Yes, because I was a soldier. Soldiers learn how to protect themselves and other people. Emma was quiet for the rest of the drive home, processing this information with the serious concentration she applied to difficult math problems. At home, Dorothy had dinner ready and the evening news playing on the kitchen television. The lead story was about Marcus, complete with security footage from the parking garage that had been leaked somehow. "Turn that off, please," Marcus said quickly, but Emma had already heard her father's name. "That's you, Daddy," she exclaimed, pointing at the screen. The footage was grainy black and white, but it clearly showed Marcus disabling 3 attackers with movements that looked almost choreographed. The news anchor was calling it an incredible display of self-defense skills that has law enforcement experts baffled. Dorothy muted the television. It was already on every channel. You can't protect her from it anymore. Emma stared at the screen, watching her father move with deadly precision. "Daddy, you look like Batman." Despite everything, Marcus laughed. "I'm not Batman, sweetheart. But you fight bad guys like Batman does, and you keep secrets like Batman too." That observation hit closer to home than Marcus was comfortable with. He sat down at the table and pulled Emma onto his lap. What you saw on TV was me protecting myself when some dangerous people tried to hurt me. I never wanted you to see that because I don't want you to be scared." "I'm not scared," Emma said matter-of-factly. "You're my daddy. You keep me safe." "Always," Marcus promised. "But I need you to understand something. The skills I used last night are from when I was a soldier, before you were born. It's not something I'm proud of having to use." "Why not?" "You stopped the bad guys." "Because violence should always be the last choice, Em. It's better to solve problems with words, or by walking away, or by asking for help. I only fought because there was no other choice." Emma nodded solemnly. "Like when Tommy Briggs was picking on Sarah Martinez at recess, and I told Mrs. Peterson instead of hitting him. Exactly like that. You did the right thing." The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Dorothy answered and spoke quietly with the caller before hanging up. "That was Jessica from your office. Channel 7 is running a special segment tonight about your military background. They've been interviewing people all day." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What kind of people?" "Former employees, business partners, neighbors, and apparently they found someone from your army unit." Marcus closed his eyes. This was exactly what he'd feared. The careful wall he'd built between his military past and civilian present was crumbling. "Who from my unit?" She didn't know. Just said they're promoting it as an exclusive interview with someone who served with you in Afghanistan. After putting Emma to bed, Marcus sat in his home office and finally opened Colonel Hayes's folder. The names brought back vivid memories. Jim Rodriguez, who'd saved Marcus's life during a Taliban ambush. Mike Chen, who'd been wounded by an IED while on patrol with Marcus. Danny Williams, who'd struggled with PTSD after their deployment. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed Jim Rodriguez's number. "Holy shit, Marcus, I was hoping you'd call." Jim's voice was exactly as Marcus remembered it, loud, confident, and tinged with a slight Texas accent. "Hey Jim, I saw your text." "Saw your text, brother, you're all over the news. 3 guys with weapons and you took them apart like it was Tuesday training. The whole squad's been texting about it." "It wasn't like that, Jim. It was just self-defense." "Self-defense? My ass. I saw the footage. That was pure Ranger training right there. You haven't lost a step." Marcus found himself smiling despite his anxiety. "It's been 15 years, Jim. Some things you never forget. Listen, I don't know if you heard, but I'm living in Denver now. Got a security business, mostly corporate stuff. Been thinking about expanding into personal protection training. Could use a partner with your skills. I'm not looking to get back into that world. I know. You went all corporate on us. But Marcus, what happened to you could happen to anyone. These days, successful people need to know how to protect themselves." They talked for another 20 minutes, catching up on the intervening years. Jim had done 2 more tours after Marcus left, then worked private security in Iraq before starting his business. He was married now with twin boys and seemed to have adjusted well to civilian life. "One more thing," Jim said before they hung up. "Danny Williams has been having a rough time. Divorced, lost his job, drinking too much. He saw the news about you and called me asking for your number. Might be good if you reached out." After ending the call, Marcus found Danny's information in the folder. They'd been close during their deployment, sharing the dark humor and unbreakable bonds that formed. Between soldiers in combat, Danny had been the squad's medic, always calm under fire, always ready with a joke to break tension. Marcus dialed the number, unsure what to expect. "Marcus." Danny's voice was slurred slightly, and Marcus could hear loud music in the background. "Holy shit, man, I can't believe it's really you." "Hey, Danny, Jim said you were trying to reach me. I saw you on TV taking down those guys. Reminded me of that night in Kandahar when those 5 Taliban tried to ambush our convoy. Remember?" That Marcus remembered. It had been one of the worst firefights of their deployment, with Danny treating wounded soldiers under enemy fire while Marcus and the others fought off the attack. "I remember. How are you doing, Danny?" There was a long pause. "Not so good, brother, not so good. Everything kind of fell apart after I got out, couldn't adjust, you know? Kept seeing things, hearing things, wife couldn't handle it." Marcus's heart ached for his former brother-in-arms. "Where are you now?" "Phoenix. Bouncing between jobs, mostly night security stuff. Keeps me busy, but the days are hard." Danny's voice broke slightly. "I tried to call the VA, but they've got waiting list for everything. Sometimes I think about..." "Danny, listen to me. You're not alone, okay? We're going to figure this out together." "You'd do that? After all these years?" "We're Rangers, Danny. We never leave a man behind. That didn't change when we got out." They talked for another hour, with Marcus learning about the struggles many of his former squad mates were facing. Some, like Jim, had thrived in civilian life. Others, like Danny, were drowning in a system that hadn't adequately prepared them for the transition. When Marcus finally went to bed, his mind was spinning with possibilities. For years, he'd convinced himself that his military experience was irrelevant to his new life. But maybe that had been a mistake. Maybe there was a way to use what he'd learned in service of something larger than himself. Emma's words echoed in his head. "You fight bad guys like Batman." Maybe she was more right than she knew. Maybe it was time to stop hiding from who he really was. The Channel 7 special report aired 3 days later, and it changed everything for Marcus Thompson. The investigative journalist had somehow tracked down Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, who had served alongside Marcus during his final deployment to Afghanistan. Maria now worked as a VA counselor in San Diego and spoke with obvious respect about Marcus's service. "Sergeant Thompson was one of the finest soldiers I ever served with," she said on camera. "He saved lives over there, including mine. What you saw in that parking garage was just a glimpse of the man we knew in combat, someone who would do anything to protect innocent people." The segment revealed details about Marcus's military service that even he had forgotten were in his official record. 3 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star for gallantry in action, and commendations for leading rescue missions behind enemy lines. The reporter had obtained declassified mission reports that painted a picture of a soldier who repeatedly risked his life to save others. Marcus watched the broadcast from his office, feeling exposed and vulnerable. The life he'd carefully constructed was being dissected on television, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By the next morning, Thompson Industries had received over 200 calls from people wanting to speak with Marcus. Veterans looking for jobs, military families asking for help, and reporters from national news outlets requesting interviews. Jessica was struggling to manage the flood of attention. "Mr. Thompson, CNN wants to do a feature story, The Today Show, is asking about a live interview, and there are dozens of local veterans organizations wanting you to speak at their events." Marcus felt the walls of his carefully ordered world crumbling. "Just tell everyone I'm not available for comment. Sir, there's one call I think you should take. It's from General Patricia Morrison." The name sent a jolt through Marcus. General Morrison had been his commanding officer during his final tour, the person who had recommended him for the Silver Star. She was now retired and running a non-profit organization for veteran affairs. "Marcus Thompson," he answered when Jessica connected the call. "Hello, Sergeant. Or should I say, Mr. CEO?" General Morrison's voice carried the same authority it had 15 years ago, but with warmth that hadn't been there in the field. "General Morrison, this is unexpected. I saw the news coverage, hell of a thing taking down 3 armed men. Your old training served you well. It wasn't something I wanted to use, ma'am. I know that. Which is exactly why I'm calling. Marcus, you've built an impressive life for yourself. Successful business, raising a daughter on your own. You should be proud. Thank you, General. But I think there's more you could be doing. I run an organization call." 6 months after the parking garage incident, Marcus Thompson stood before a packed auditorium at the local community center, looking out at an audience of military families, business leaders, and community members. The transformation in his life had been remarkable and unexpected. Working with General Morrison's veteran support organization had opened doors Marcus never knew existed. His company, Thompson Industries, had partnered with 3 other businesses to create a comprehensive job training program for veterans transitioning to civilian careers. What started as a small pilot program now employed over 50 former service members across various industries. Emma sat in the front row with Dorothy, beaming with pride as her father prepared to speak. She now understood much more about his military background and had become his biggest supporter in what she called his helping veteran friends work. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily through the auditorium. 6 months ago, I thought my military service was something to be kept buried in the past. I believed that being a successful businessman and father meant completely separating myself from the soldier I used to be. The audience listened intently as Marcus recounted the events of that night in the parking garage. He'd told this story dozens of times now at veteran events, business conferences, and community gatherings, but it never got easier to relive those moments. What I learned that night wasn't just that my training had stayed with me, but that trying to deny who I really was had been holding me back from who I could become. In the audience, Danny Williams sat with his girlfriend Sarah, both of them clean and sober after 6 months in the support program Marcus had helped establish. Danny now worked as a counselor at the VA, using his own struggles to help other veterans navigate their transitions. His life had turned around completely after that desperate phone call to Marcus. The real victory that night wasn't defeating 3 attackers, Marcus continued. It was the reminder that our experiences, even the difficult ones, can become sources of strength and service to others. Jim Rodriguez had flown in from Denver for the event. His security business was now partnering with Marcus to provide self-defense training for corporate executives and their families. The program had proven so successful that they were expanding to 3 more cities. Marcus scanned the crowd and saw Maria Santos, who had become the program's head counselor after relocating from San Diego. Seeing her interviewed on television had been the catalyst for Marcus reaching out to his old unit, and her expertise in veteran mental health had been invaluable in designing their support services. "My daughter Emma asked me recently if I was still Batman," Marcus said, drawing laughter from the audience. "I told her that Batman works alone, but real heroes work together. What we've built here isn't the work of one person. It's the result of a community deciding that service doesn't end when you take off the uniform." Colonel Hayes sat with several other military liaisons, all of whom had become regular partners in Marcus's expanding veteran support network. The self-defense classes he'd reluctantly agreed to teach had grown into a comprehensive safety program, offered free to military families throughout the region. Thompson Industries has been transformed by this experience as well, Marcus explained. Our veteran employees bring perspectives, skills, and dedication that have made us more innovative and successful than ever before. When you hire a veteran, you're not doing charity. You're gaining someone trained to solve problems, work under pressure, and never give up on their mission. The applause was thunderous. Marcus had become an unexpected spokesperson for veteran integration, speaking at conferences across the country and consulting with other companies on how to build effective veteran hiring programs. After the presentation, Marcus mingled with the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing new initiatives. A young veteran approached him, still carrying the hesitant demeanor of someone fresh out of the service. "Mr. Thompson? I'm Kevin Martinez. I saw your interview on CNN last month. I've been out for 8 months and can't seem to find my place in the civilian world." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "What's your background, Kevin?" "Infantry, 3 tours in Iraq. But all anyone sees on my resume is soldier. Like that's all I am." "Come see me Monday morning," Marcus said, handing him a business card. "We've got positions opening up, and I think you'd be surprised how much your military experience applies to the business world." This conversation happened several times each week now. Veterans found Marcus through news coverage, word of mouth, or referrals from other service members. His company had become known as a place where military experience was valued and understood. As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself standing outside the community center with Emma and Dorothy. The same city that had once felt foreign and disconnected from his past now felt like home in a completely different way. "Daddy," Emma said, taking his hand, "I'm proud of you for helping all those people. I'm proud of me too, sweetheart. And I'm proud of you for understanding why this work is important." Dorothy squeezed her son's shoulder. "Your father would have been amazed to see what you've built, Marcus. You found a way to honor your service while building something new." The 3 attackers from that night had all been convicted and sentenced to several years in prison. Jake Morrison had written Marcus a letter from jail, apologizing for the attack and expressing amazement at how Marcus had responded to their attempt at revenge by creating programs to help struggling veterans like themselves. Marcus's phone buzzed, with a text from General Morrison. "Saw the news coverage of tonight's event. The Secretary of Defense wants to meet with you about expanding the program nationally. Free Thursday?" Marcus smiled as he read the message. The scared, angry men who had attacked him in that parking garage had unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that was now helping veterans across the country. Their attempt to destroy his life had instead led him to discover his true purpose. "What are you smiling about?" Emma asked as they walked to the car. "I'm just thinking about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us can lead to the best things we do." Emma considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important matters. "Like how Mommy dying was terrible, but it made us closer?" Marcus stopped walking and knelt down to look his daughter in the eyes. "Yes, Em. Exactly like that. Sometimes life gives us hard things so we can learn how to help other people with their hard things." As they drove home through the city, Marcus now saw as truly his own. He reflected on the journey from that terrifying night in the parking garage to this moment of satisfaction and purpose. He'd learned that running from your past doesn't make you free, it just makes you incomplete. The soldier and the businessman weren't separate people competing for space in his life. They were different aspects of the same person, and when he'd finally allowed them to work together, he'd become more effective at both roles than he'd ever imagined possible. Marcus Thompson had discovered that the greatest victory wasn't surviving an attack or building a successful business or even raising a wonderful daughter. The greatest victory was learning how to use all of your experiences, both good and bad, to make the world a little better for the people around you. And as Emma had so wisely observed, that was exactly what heroes do.